The world's most famous Irish whiskey begins with a small twist. The name comes from John Jameson, who was born in Alloa, Scotland. He was not an Irish publican or a farmer, but a sheriff clerk. Then he crossed into Dublin and helped build the face of Irish whiskey. One bottle began carrying a story more complicated than nationality. Look closely at the label and you find a small motto. It is Sine Metu. It means without fear. Tradition links it to a family story about facing pirates at sea. So the ship on the label is not decoration, but the first symbol this whiskey remembers. John Jameson did not begin in Dublin. He was born in Alloa, Scotland in 1740 and worked with law papers and public records. That was not the usual origin story for a whiskey founder. Then marriage changed his path. By marrying Margaret Haig, he entered one of the great whiskey families of the age. That connection carried John Jameson toward Dublin. In the late 1770s, he moved to Ireland with his family. The destination was a distillery on Bow Street. Inside his in-laws' whiskey network, he learned the trade and began to run the work. The Jameson name slowly became the name of the drink on that street. Dublin was not a quiet harbor town then. Around 1780, it was a huge market full of opportunity and competition. More than 100 breweries and distilleries sent smoke into the city air. To survive there, a name was not enough. People needed a taste and a method they would come back to. Jameson held on to triple distillation. Most Scottish whiskey was distilled twice, while this Irish style went one step further. With 3 passes, the spirit became lighter and smoother in character. The blend of pot still whiskey and grain whiskey also created balance. That smoothness later became the force that carried Jameson outward. Why do so many beginners start with Jameson? Because it feels relatively approachable for first-time whiskey drinkers. In the glass, you may first notice familiar sweetness like apple and vanilla. Behind it come nutty grain, gentle spice, and a hint of sweet sherry. Smoothness was not just a slogan, but a character that could travel. In the 19th century, Bow Street no longer felt like a small distillery. Inside it were coopers, mechanics, painters, and workers who kept the place alive. By around 1870, it had grown into a city within a city. Jameson became more than the name of one man. It became the name of a workplace, a family, and a craft community. As Jameson grew, it became exposed to changes far beyond Dublin. World War I brought grain pressure, fuel shortages, and disruption to Jameson. Then American Prohibition closed one of its most promising markets almost overnight. From 1920 to 1933, the path for alcohol in America narrowed. The global market for Irish whiskey dried with it. Irish whiskey that once looked outward began to fall behind. War, post-independence, trade conflict, and prohibition all pushed in the same direction. Against faster-growing whiskeys, the old Irish reputation became harder to protect. Jameson was not outside that danger. The green bottle we know today did not simply survive by accident. Competition alone was no longer enough. In 1966, Jameson, Powers, and Cork distillers joined to become Irish distillers. Distilleries that had once stood apart now climbed into the same boat. It was not a romantic victory, but a practical decision to endure. The words "without fear" were tested again. Jameson's home on Bow Street ended its last distillation in 1970. That day, nearly 200 years of distilling on Bow Street went quiet. Jameson chose not to hold on to Bow Street, but to move production somewhere it could keep going. In 1975, that choice led south to the larger Midleton distillery in County Cork. Bow Street stopped, but Jameson did not disappear. From Midleton, Jameson moved outward again. In 1988, Pernod Ricard acquired Irish distillers, and the global network grew stronger. Today, Jameson is presented as the best-selling Irish whiskey in the world. That revival came from taste, history, and distribution moving in the same direction. Smoothness now reaches far beyond one street in Dublin. Return to the label and the small motto now feels different. Sine Metu is not just elegant Latin decoration. The Scottish name, the Dublin street, The triple distilled taste, war, and prohibition all sit inside it. When Walkie raises the glass, what remains is not just brand history. It is time that survived without fear inside one drink.